I'm Kristen Casado. Welcome to Al's Chats. Today we are live. We are on our Facebook page and we are chatting about Women and Girls in Science Day, which is coming up tomorrow on March 11th. And I'm very pleased to be joined by one of our Alzheimer's Association funded researchers, someone who's doing some really amazing work in the dementia field, Dr. Carolyn Fredericks of Yale. Thank you so much for being with us.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
So tell us a little bit about what you do at Yale, some of your focuses in your study.
Sure. So in addition to seeing patients in the clinic, I do a lot of research, and specifically we're using different kinds of imaging like MRI and PET to study Alzheimer's disease and try to understand what's going on with the brain circuits in Alzheimer's and how that relates to where the Alzheimer's disease itself is spreading. I have a special interest in looking at the less common types of Alzheimer's disease. So we think a lot about Alzheimer's as being a disease of memory, but some people with Alzheimer's might actually have symptoms that are more about language or about their ability to solve spatial puzzles, that kind of thing. So we're interested in all types of Alzheimer's.
And what's, and many of us know, it's hard to diagnose specific types of Alzheimer's, right? Specific types of dementia, excuse me, because of the fact that sometimes they do come out, present in a bit of a different way, right? Fortunately, a lot of dementia ends is the same way because there's a lot of damage to the brain and the brain cells and brain shrinkage as well. So what would that be? Could you give me some examples of looking for something that actually presents as a language issue or as a visual spatial issue?
Sure. Yeah. So in terms of language, a lot of people will notice as they get older, or even as an early symptom of Alzheimer's disease, that they're really struggling to find words. But for some people, that's just far and away the biggest problem. It has been from the beginning, and it sort of continues to be. And they find that over time, it's just really hard to express themselves with language. They find themselves kind of stopping mid-sentence, again, really struggling to pick up a word that they're looking for. And that's just a bigger problem for them than memory ever is. So some of those patients are more sort of a language variant. Other times people will come to me and they'll say, I think something's wrong with my vision. My husband will say to me, like, where's the ketchup? And it'll be right in front of me in the refrigerator, and I just can't see it, even though it's, right there. And if someone picks it up and gives it to me alone, I can see it's there. I just can't find it when it's surrounded by other things. So it can be these very sort of odd symptoms that at first people might not even realize are a brain problem as opposed to, say, an eye problem. And that's the way that a spatial Alzheimer's variant can come to us.
Interesting. And then, so what you're taking a look at is how this progresses to help you understand the brain. Is that right?
That's right. So we know quite a bit, at this point about how the tau protein, which is one of those problematic proteins in Alzheimer's disease, how it spreads in people with memory loss. But we don't know much about how it spreads in people with these other kinds of Alzheimer's. It seems like it starts in different parts of the brain, the parts that are more important for language production or for spatial reasoning. But we don't really understand how it moves over time in these people and how that impacts their ability to do to perform language functions and to do things like find that bottle of ketchup in a crowded fridge. And so my hope is that we can look at how the tau protein is moving using a special kind of PET scan, and then relate that to how people are doing on testing and how their brain circuits are working in MRI.
Special kind of PET scan. Okay. Tell me, if you would, Carolyn, just go through a little bit about why you decided to get involved in dementia research, because there's a lot of different research out there, and you're a medical doctor as well.
Right.
So, why this kind of research?
My grandmother had Alzheimer's disease, and I think that's a story that's common to, so many of us, but also in dementia research. And so watching her go through that when I was in high school and college, as I was at the same time becoming really interested in neuroscience, it just sort of felt like a natural fit. When I went to medical school, I was really excited about the brain, and brain research in dementia just especially fascinated me, I think because of that personal resonance. I wanted to understand this illness that really affects so much about who someone is as a person. It's a medical illness, but it's also an illness of the self in a way. And so it's just so important for us to understand more about it. We don't have a treatment, and it's just so common.
Right. We're hearing more and more, and we as the Alzheimer's Association, reach out, and we have a lot of things for people who are just starting this journey, right? We have a lot of care consultations and education classes, and of course our 800 number, which is 800-272-3900, if anybody has any questions about anything. But I wanted to really delve into a little bit about research, and people ask, where the money goes, and in part it goes to, be able to help pay for our helpline and our free education classes, but also to research, which is crucial. And we're like the largest funder of research in the entire world, largest profit.
Yeah.
And that's really important to us because research is really the path forward. Yeah. So what are you, how long is your study? What are you looking for right now? Because I know you're actively, I know COVID actually slowed it down. Why don't you chat about that and then talk about what you're looking for right now?
Yeah, so I was lucky to be funded by the Alzheimer's Association back in February of this year. And we had gotten all settled and brought in our first research participant for a screening visit, and then everything shut down. So Yale's research facilities were essentially closed starting in March, as so many things were. And then we've slowly begun to reopen as of late summer, early fall. So we're now enrolling people, and it's a little different. We're all wearing masks and we're de-densified. So, you'll see fewer of us in the spaces where we do research, and we can't enroll as many people as we would have because of all that. But we're excited to be running again. Basically, the study involves 3 visits. So people come in to see us first for a screening where we go over the consent forms, and I just kind of learn a little bit about the person's story. I take a clinical history and do an exam. Our research assistants help collect a blood sample, and we'll do a few other little tests. And then after that, if the person seems appropriate for the study, they come in for a visit that it's basically a whole morning. They do some pen and paper testing for an hour and a half or so, take a little break, and then they do an MRI scan. And while they're in the scanner, we have them do various things. So look at pictures, hear sounds, make judgments about what they're hearing and seeing. And that's the second visit. And the third visit is for PET scans. A lot of our patients come to us and may already know that they're amyloid positive. If not, we'll do an amyloid scan. And then we always do a tau scan so that we can see the tau protein in the brain.
Explain a little bit about amyloid and tau for those who are not clear what they are.
Absolutely. So briefly, these are the 2 proteins that we think are the pathologic signature of Alzheimer's disease. So if we were to look at the brain of someone with Alzheimer's under a microscope, we'd see these abnormal collections of both of these proteins in the brain. And they're related to each other in some very complex ways that research is still trying to untangle. They're also 2 of the most important targets of current drug trials. So these PET scans let us see those proteins in someone who's alive.
Right. And we weren't able to really look at a live brain for a long time, right? So these scans are pretty fascinating and open up a whole new world, obviously, because you can watch things as they progress.
Exactly. And I think amyloid PET has been around for a little bit longer. And that one sort of gives us a yes-no answer because the amyloid is spread pretty diffusely throughout the brain. But tau is a newer tool, and it's basically only used in research so far. And it's very exciting because we think that where we see the tau, that seems to match very closely to where someone's symptoms are.
Mm-hmm. And is this in the hopes that we would be getting closer to some sort of new treatment or a cure or understanding, prevention? What's like the major focus of maybe this study thing?
Right. I think, especially with my emphasis on these less common types of Alzheimer's disease that we understand less, the hope is that these kinds of scans or other information that we learned from this work could help us in future clinical trials. So if there's a drug trial that's enrolling these patients who have Alzheimer's, but memory is not the big focus, we'll still have a good way of measuring using imaging how much is the drug helping? Is the tau progressing more slowly than we would have expected? And until we know where the tau usually goes in these variants, we can't really know that. So I think it'll form some important groundwork for drug trials in the future.
Oh, that's wonderful, because we don't have, as we mentioned, we don't have a cure, a treatment. We don't have something that modifies the disease. There are some things before the FDA that help with that.
Right.
To get some more, to obviously get more tools for this. Let's talk about, tomorrow being International Women and Girls in Science Day. And we are very excited that, we have such really strong women, especially in the research field, especially here at Yale, Connecticut. Talk a little bit about, you have an all-female lab, which is exciting, and not your intent you shared with me. I wasn't intending to just have an all-female lab, but you did. You do.
Right.
And talk about why that's important, kind of mentoring the next generation of female science?
I think it's so important. And, 20 years ago, I was actually here at Yale as a research assistant myself. And my very first research mentor was a woman, a new faculty member, kind of in the same shoes that I'm in now, just starting to build her research program. And her mentorship just made such an impact on me in terms of both inspiring me to go into this field and also understanding realistically what that meant, watching her juggle the demands of two young kids and a new research career and all the political stuff that's involved in growing a research program. And so it was just so helpful to have someone ahead of me on the path who I could look up to. And she's someone I've remained in touch with ever since then. We still have coffee, mask distance coffee these days, but we're still in touch. And I've always wanted to pass that along. So yes, my two research associates right now are two wonderful young women. One is headed to medical school in just a few months. The other is still considering, PhD versus MD. And it's been such a pleasure to kind of help them grow and learn a little bit about the science.
You want to just touch upon the challenge, because you're a mom as well, right? The challenges of being a woman in this field.
Yeah, it's really something. And I think, my generation coming through school believed we could do anything the men could do. And I think on some level that's certainly true, but there are definitely some barriers for women that just aren't the same for men. And I feel like this year with the pandemic has really driven that home for a lot of us, realizing that, when daycare disappears and school disappears, it's the moms who are doing most of the childcare, even if both parents are staying home and trying to work from home. And, and I'm only speaking of partnered women, there are women who are doing this by themselves too, and that's its own thing and even tougher. So I think our society doesn't do as much as I wish it would to support women with young children and women with kids in school who are trying to build these really ambitious careers.
Right. There's a lot going on. There's a lot to juggle. There's a lot to, make sure everything's fine. And it's hard. It's challenging. What else do you think? So on that vein, what else could maybe institutions, businesses, health facilities do to, really support women in science now?
I think there are some concrete things that could really make a huge difference. Things as simple as paid maternity leave that's more universal or that's more flexible or that's longer term, easier access to early child care, early child education. That's something that so many countries offer in a state-sponsored way. And coming from the Bay Area, a lot of my friends who worked for those big Silicon Valley companies, a lot of them have on-site daycare and other benefits like that. That just makes such a huge difference for moms in the workforce.
Absolutely. What do you see as some encouraging words? Perhaps you could share some encouraging words, to young girls out there who are thinking about getting into a field or research or doctor or medical, yeah, because you're doing both, which is a lot. So thank you for all you do to help us with our mission. We greatly appreciate it. What's advice for some folks thinking about?
I think it's funny that you mentioned my lab turned out to be all female, and it just happened to be the case that the most qualified, excited applicants happen to be women. And I think that's a really wonderful sign. I think more and more young women are choosing to major in the sciences, to go into research. And I find that marriage of clinical medicine and clinical research, it's one that I was really attracted to in maybe a stereotypically feminine way. You care for these patients in clinic, and then you also are doing research to have something more to offer them and to advance the field. So I think that's something that's so meaningful to me in a way that more abstract, less obviously applicable research might not be, where you have to sort of visualize your impact being very indirect over time. This just feels so linked to the stories of the patients that I see day in and day out in my clinic.
And I think that's something that, we all have to work harder at, in someone who's like pure research, to expose them to the people who they're helping, right? To expose them to the stories and to have them meet families who their work, could benefit. So I think that's, something that we can all work on, really, to open up the empathetic portion, right, of that, of what you do.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So share really quickly, if you will, how people can get involved in your study, because you are seeking well and unwell, they call it, right? So folks who don't have any issues with memory and also folks who do. So if you can give some parameters of your study.
Yeah. Yeah. So we're enrolling basically the whole spectrum. I mentioned this focus on these less common forms of Alzheimer's disease, and that's certainly true. But in order to understand these variants, we have to also have groups of people who, as you said, are completely healthy, no cognitive concerns, and also people who've been diagnosed with mild cognitive impairment or Alzheimer's disease that's more kind of memory based. So we're really happy to hear from anyone in any of those groups. And we can also, of course, help people connect to other studies at Yale that may be interesting to them. We're looking for people who are over the age of 50, just so that we can keep everyone in sort of a slightly older age range. And we're listed on the Alzheimer's Association's trial match, and also have our own lab website that I can share. It's frederickslab.com. And so people can learn more there.
You could spell Fredericks so that people don't forget that extra E.
Right, so Fredericks is F as in Frank, REDERICKS, lab.com.
Excellent. All right, and then you can also call our 800 number, and they can send you folks over to Trial Match. And just to really quickly, just overview of Trial Match, I'd like to say it's like a match.com for clinical trials. It's like a dating service. So you essentially put in your information, and then you are sent information about trials that are in your area that you may qualify for. The association and Trial Match never gives your information out. It's really up to you to kind of receive and then say, oh, maybe there looks to be something in the Carolyn Fredericks lab at Yale. What is that about? And we inquire. So there's no pressure on either side. But Trial Match is interesting because it does give anything from range from going to get an MRI, doing some cognitive testing, to exercise and cognition, to drug trials. So there really is just so many things. I feel like there's something almost for everyone. So, research and clinical trials are the only way forward. So if you want to get involved, please let us know, and we'd love to help you out with that. Anything else you'd like to share with us, Dr. Fredericks? Thank you so much for your time today.
No, it's been such a pleasure to partner with the Connecticut chapter of the Alzheimer's Association. And please, everyone who's watching, feel free to get in touch if you have questions about our work or if there's anything we can do.
And thank you, and go Women in Science.
Right.
Excellent. All right. Thank you very much, Dr. Fredericks.
My pleasure. Bye.